Hey guys, and welcome back to Learning-CrazyElectronics. In this video, we're going to be building a smart car so that it can be controlled through a web application. Now let's look at the components you're going to be needing to follow along this tutorial. We've got 4 wheels, a bunch of nuts and bolts to hold everything in place, 8 fasteners, 4 wheel balancers, a frame or 2 chassis boards, and 4 motors. Now let's look at the electrical side of things. Here we've got a Raspberry Pi. I'm using the 3B Plus. You can use any model you like. And I just want to mention that I've already installed the OS. So check out my other video to know how to download the OS into Raspberry Pi. Here I've got a case for holding my Raspberry Pi in place. The main part, the L298N module, also known as the motor driver. A power bank. This is a 10,400 milliamp hour power bank. I'm using the Charm Chas today, and it provides 5 volts and 2.5 amperes of current. Here we have 50 centimeter USB cable just to make things neat, and a bunch of jumper cables to attach everything. I've got a bunch of red and black wires representing the live and the ground of the motors. I've got 4 AA batteries, 1.5 volts providing each, a battery pack to hold the batteries, and that's really it on the electrical side of things. Now I'm going to be adding extra components to my electrical things. So here I've got my distance sensor and an LCD display. These are extra components. You don't need these to follow along the tutorial, but these are just the modifications I'm making to my car. Now let's look at the tools. Here I have scissors, just some screwdrivers, masking tape, and a glue gun preferably to stick everything in place. Yeah guys, that's all the components you're going to be needing to follow along this tutorial. I'll leave a link to all the items in the description below. For now, let's go into the tutorial. So, what are we going to be doing in this tutorial? In this tutorial, we're going to be learning how to plug our wires of the motors into the L298N module, and what ports you have to plug everything into the L298N module. So we're just going to be plugging everything into the L298N module and getting everything ready. And once we've learned all that, we're going to be going into building basically all the structure of our car. So let's go straight into the video. As you can see, I've got a simple diagram here with my L298N module to get things a little bit better. Here I've got my motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, and motor 4. Now it's a really important concept to understand that motor 1 and motor 2 are always joined, and motor 3 and motor 4 are always joined as well. So these two are the exact opposite. Now the wiring. So as usual, you would plug in your red and black wires into your motors, and you would join them up, and then you would join this to the V plus and the V minus of the motors. Let me just get that nice and clear. So if you can, okay, so now you can see better. This is the V plus and this is the V minus, as we already know, and you will be plugging our motors V plus and V minus into the L298N modules V plus and V minus. Same thing goes to the other motors as well, motor 4 and motor 3. You plug the V plus of the motors into the V plus of the L298N module, and the V minus of the motors into the V minus of the L298N module. So once you got all that plugged in, that means you've basically just got your L298N, basically your motors are ready to go now. So let's go into the VCC and the ground and how do you plug in the 5 volts of the Raspberry Pi. Okay, so the VCC is nothing but the total power supply of the main power supply. So these 4 AA batteries, which would be plugged into our battery pack. So then the live wire would be the VCC. So this would be our VCC. And this would be our ground. So our VCC goes into this port. Let's just get that nice and clear. As you can see, it goes into this port, our VCC. And our ground, the ground of our VCC, goes into the ground of the L29810 module, right there. If you can see that. And then your 5 volts, right here, as you can see, your 5 volts, goes into the 5 volts of the L29810 module. And your ground of your 5 volts also goes into the ground of the L29810 module. You might be wondering how we're going to get 2 grounds into the same one port of the L29810 module. Well, you just join the leads and then you can just put them straight in. Okay, basically now what we've done is we've learned what wires and how to plug them into our L29810 module. So when we are actually building our car, it will be so much easier for us to wire up the motors and do everything really. Okay, so now we've learned what do we plug all our wires into the L29810 module. We can go ahead and wire up our motors. So you can just go ahead and take two wires really, representing your ground and your power live wire. So I've just taken red and black representing the ground and red representing the live wire. You can just find these anywhere really in old USB cables, as you can see. Just strip them, you can find them anywhere. Everything wired up, it should start looking something like this. Okay, so let's just go ahead and look what's going on here. So first our example motor, as you can see, once we've got it wired up, you see the black is going on this side, the red is going on this side. It doesn't really matter which way the leads go, it's just that these two have to be spinning in the same direction, and these two have to be spinning in the same direction. It also doesn't have to be that they both have to spin forward and these both have to spin backward. As long as they both are spinning the same direction, it's fine. Now, the next step. Once you've checked all your motors and they're both spinning in the same direction, you can go ahead and do your next step. For your next step, all you have to do is join the red of your first motor to the red of your second motor. So you just join the leads up. I'm just going to give an example right here. Just have to do is just twist the leads together, and if you just after some time they should be joined. You do the same with the grounds. So you're just going to go ahead and twist them together and make sure the leads are secure and they're not loose, because once you put the frame on top, it's going to be very hard to fix any other lead back in case if it's loose, it falls. So once you wired up your motors, your motor should be joined. So here's the red and here's the black, the live wire, they both are joined, as you can see. And the black wire also joined, as you can see. Now you're actually trying to do the same with these as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, as you can see, now I've joined up my leads or my wires for this side and this side. Now we can go ahead and start building the frame or the structure of our car. So let's move these motors to the side and get our frame. So as you can see, for my frame, I have 2 chassis boards right here. You can see that. And then to start off, we're going to set the motors in place, so we're only going to need 1 chassis board. And we're going to need fasteners to keep the motors in place. So you'll need 4 for each side, because 2 fasteners are for 1 motor. So if we're going to place 4 motors. We're going to need 4 on each side, as so. Once you've got 4 on each side, you'll also need 2 screws on each side. So 2 screws on this side, 2 screws on this side, 2 screws on that side, 2 screws on that side. So once you've done that, go ahead and place your bolts. So 2 on this side. So once you've done that, you're ready to fit your motors in place. So I'm going to go ahead and show you an example motor to fit one in place. So let's go ahead and do that. Why don't we fit this motor in? So we know that that's the style of our frame. So that means we already know that this is where these motors are going to go. So to fit the motors in, well, this is in my board case, so I don't know what kind of frame you've got, but if you're doing this to my frame, all you would do is put the motors to a side first, and you would take your fastener and you would put that into the hole, the cross mark on your frame. So once you've done that, you can go ahead and take your motor and make sure your wheel balancer is exactly in line so it can actually spin without any things coming in its way. So to fit them in place, as you saw, we need to put the fastener in place and take another fastener and make sure it's on this side. Then go ahead and take a screw and put one right through each hole. So I've got one right here, so I'm just going to place that in there. Just get it through, and the other one right on top. So once you put the screws in, it should start looking something like this. And what you can do next is just take your bolt and just fasten both of these screws so they're nice and tight and the motor's in place. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so once you fit in your motors and you fasten them, they should start looking something like this. They're my motor wires. Make sure that, give them a good pull and see if they're nice and strong, because you don't want to, mess it up and then have to go and open your frame up again and then just put them on again, because it's going to be much harder. So once you've done that, make sure you give your motors a nice screw in so they're nice and tight. Make sure they're nice and firm so they don't wobble or fall about when you're actually driving your car or testing it. So go ahead and do this. Do the same thing with your other motors as well, which are your backward spinning motors. So let's go ahead and do that with our motors. Once you put all your motors in place and fix all the bolts up, they should start looking something like this. And make sure you actually do check them by twisting them around and they do not fall. So that means they're nice and firm in their position. So once you do that, you can go ahead and take your other chassis board. Then we can go ahead and start building on the frame. So to start building on the frame, you'll need some of these, so there's some height between this and the frame so that we can actually start building it up. So I'm going to show you how that's done in just a minute. So what we need to do is go ahead and get a screw like this, and if you can see, I don't know if you can see clearly, but there's a hole right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a screw right through here. And then what you're going to do is take your bolt and you can just screw it onto that screw right there. You're going to do these to one here, if you can see, one here, one here, one here, and one here, so 6 in total. So let's go ahead and do that. So once you put all your bolts on, it should look something like this. Now what you want to do is just make sure they're nice and tight. So use a screwdriver or what else you've got near you that can tighten this up. You can do it with your hand, but I'm going to use a screwdriver, so let's go ahead and do that. So once it's nice and tight, your bottom frame is ready. So we can just go ahead and build on the top frame. So for the top frame, you've got another chassis board exactly like this one. As you can see, it's just exactly this board. It goes right on top, and you can use these bolts to screw them right on there. So as you can see, there's a couple holes there as well to just line up with your holes of your bolts, and then you can just go ahead and screw that on. So one common mistake that's made is there's actually two different sides of the chassis, as you can see. There's one hole, a hole, and then different on this side, and it's different on this side. So make sure you screw them on exactly mirroring the image of your board on the bottom, so you can actually get all the screws in place and then fit that in place. So let's go ahead and do that. So in this case, mine goes like this way. So all my screws should be lining up. And once I realize that all my screws have lined up, I know that my board has to be placed on like this. But before we do that, we have to find some way to actually go ahead and fit these wires through, so because the L29810 module is going to be on top of the frame. So we're going to have to find some way to fit these guys into the frame. So one thing you can do is go ahead and just put it in through, there's usually some holes made on the chassis board for you for common wiring. So you can just go ahead and place those two wires into the chassis board, and it should be quite easy. You don't want too much wiring because your L298N module is going to be right next to the wiring. So you don't need to, just get a lot in there, because you want the motors to have some wiring too, so they don't get too pulled on. So once you get everything in place, you can go ahead and screw the frame on. So all you have to do is just put your screw through this hole right here, if you can see, and then go ahead and screw it on. So I'm going to use a screwdriver to actually pull it out and put it back in so it's in the exact position as my bottom chassis. Then I can just go ahead and screw this on. So once you screw that on, you can go ahead and do the same to all the bolts on the side. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so once you screw the frame on, you should basically get the ideal structure of your car. So you've got your frame ready, you can go ahead and pop the wheels on. So we have our wheels right here, as you can see. You can go ahead and put them in any way we like. Just go ahead and insert them like this. So we're just going to go ahead and insert one in. You can do this to all of your motors. So once you insert your wheels in, your car should be starting to look actually like a car now. So you should be able to actually move it about, and it should be able to rotate in any way you like. So So that's it for this tutorial, guys. Make sure you check out part 2 to actually go ahead and put all the electronical items on top to actually go ahead and in the next tutorial we'll start coding. So hope you like the video.